What up, Coordination? On this GreenPilled episode, we are talking about the Gitcoin Grants decentralized Alpha Round. So a quadratic funding round hosted by Gitcoin on the completely new decentralized modular protocol that Gitcoin has built. So on this episode, we've got Connor and Janine from the partnerships team at Gitcoin, and we've got Nate from the product team on Gitcoin. And we are talking in this episode about the $1 million alpha round for climate Web3 projects, ETH Infra Web3 projects, and Web3 open source that is happening from January 17th to the 31st. So this episode will air on January 17th, the date that the round has started. And the reason that we had this episode is that we wanted to talk about Gitcoin's evolution into the protocol. We wanted to tell you about the first alpha protocol round that is happening on top of Grants stack and the allocation protocol. So that means no more sign in with GitHub, no more centralized platform. This is a modular, decentralized code base that anyone can fork and give their community flexibility on how they allocate their resources. Much simpler UX and much more elegant technical architecture. So disclosure on this episode, I am a co-founder of Gitcoin, but have since disaffiliated since it's become a DAO. I hold GTC, I hold ETH, and I hold DAI. These are tokens involved in building the Ethereum ecosystem on Gitcoin. That is not why we do this episode. We do it because we're excited about quadratic funding on Gitcoin. Gitcoin has created $72 million worth of public goods funding for the Ethereum ecosystem. Many of you listeners have gotten money or given money on Gitcoin Grants. And so we're just really excited to see this alpha round launching, and basically a quick primer on quadratic funding. If you're not familiar already, quadratic funding is basically a way of allocating a matching pool to the results of a crowdfunding campaign. And so during this 2 weeks between the 17th of January and the 31st of January, there'll be a $1 million matching pool that will be allocated to the results of a crowdfunding campaign. And during that round, the matching will happen quadratically, which is basically a mathy way of saying the number of contributors to each grant matters more than the amount funded for each grant. And that's what quadratic funding is. It's actually a really powerful way of pushing power to the edges, decentralizing and creating a more democratic way of allocating funding in the Ethereum ecosystem, but now really in any ecosystem that uses the grant stack and quadratic funding. So, there have been many notable projects that have been funded by Gitcoin, the centralized version in the past, most notably Uniswap, 1inch Exchange, Yearn Finance. Infrastructure projects like Prismatic or Lighthouse have been funded by Gitcoin in the past. And I'm really excited to see what projects get surfaced in this next round of Gitcoin. Quadratic funding is kind of a collective intelligence mechanism that lets you see what the Ethereum community is excited about, because what they're funding on Gitcoin is what they're excited about. And quadratic funding upregulates the projects that the most people are most excited about. So this episode is a banger if you're into quadratic funding, if you're into Gitcoin's evolution into a decentralized modular protocol and DAO, then this episode is for you. If you're interested in contributing to the $1 million climate, ETH infrastructure, and Web3 open source round happening on January 17th to 31st, then this episode is for you. So without further ado, I give you Connor, Janine, and Nate from Gitcoin DAO. Enjoy, Coordination.
The Glow dollar is a new stablecoin with a very special property. As the market cap of Glow goes up, extreme poverty goes down. Glow is a dollar-backed, non-profit stablecoin that creates basic income for people living in extreme poverty. Glow is basically the same business model as USDC, with yield-generating treasuries on one side and a stablecoin on Ethereum on the other. But instead of being a for-profit company, Glow is a non-profit that donates 100% of all yields from the Glow Reserve to GiveDirectly's basic income program. GiveDirectly is a charity that gives people money, no strings attached, to people living in poverty, and is a charity that Vitalik has previously donated to and supported in the past. With Glow, you can reduce poverty just by holding a stablecoin. Glow is launching in early 2023, and you can join the waitlist at glowdollar.org/greenpill. That's glodollar.org/greenpill. Working in Web3 is awesome, but working outside of the typical W-2 employee structure is a deal breaker for so many. OPOLIS is helping the self-sovereign worker focus on what they do best, their work. Tax time is coming up. OPOLIS helps professionalize your business by helping you form an entity, generate proof of employment through pay stubs, and receive a W-2 at the end of the tax year. Are you self-employed and forced to spend money on expensive healthcare insurance with limited coverage? OPOLIS leverages group buying power through a community employment co-op, helping you save 20 to 50% on high-quality, affordable healthcare options through Cigna. And finally, OPOLIS's member owners share in OPOLIS's success and profits based on their work token holdings. You must be authorized to work inside the United States in select Canadian provinces to receive OPOLIS's benefits. Book a 30-minute free consultation with OPOLIS's experts and join OPOLIS by March 31st, 2023 to get 1,000 work and 1,000 bank tokens. Go to connect.opolis.co/bankless to get started. And if you're going to ETH Denver, make sure to stop by the OPOLIS booth or attend their Future of Work Summit hosted by OPOLIS.
Glad to have you all excited to talk about the Grants Alpha Round. So this episode we're recording on Monday, January 16th. Tomorrow, when this episode airs on the 17th, Grants Alpha Round will be live. So what is that and how can people get involved?
I'll go. It's going to be 3 different rounds that we're running as a test on the protocol. It's going to be the first test that the Gitcoin team runs on the protocol, and the 3 rounds are open source software. We've got ETH infrastructure and then climate solutions. So we're really excited to run these. It's a curated, all 3 of them are curated rounds with grantees that have previously done rounds previously on the protocol, on our product, and are now going to be the first ones testing out the protocol with us. So we're super stoked about it. And Connor, when are we running them?
Yeah, so this round kicks off tomorrow or today, or yesterday in the past, depending on when you're watching this, January 17th at 12 o'clock UTC. So earlier in the morning for anyone in the US on January 17th, and it'll run until January 31st. And one addition I'd just add to what Janine said is that this is essentially kind of the first test round of the Gitcoin program, or what will evolve into the Gitcoin program. So the thing about the new protocol is that it's, kind of fully permissionless and self-service, and anyone can run their own QF round, grant program, any type of sort of grant infrastructure in the future at any time. And Gitcoin will kind of have our own set of rounds that we run on a recurring basis, some that are new, some that get replaced. But we kind of plan to keep up our cadence of rounds that we've been doing for a few years now, but on this new platform. And yeah, so this is going to be like the kind of first taste of what we plan to run. And then, we're hoping a lot of other organizations kind of hop on and start using it as well. And so we're not going to be the only ones running grant programs and doing quadratic funding on the protocol. But this is just the first step towards us running our program and then enabling everyone else to run their own as well.
Right. So listeners may be familiar with Gitcoin Grants rounds 1 through 15 that ran from January 2019 to late 2022. And it sounds like there's a whole new platform that's decentralized and modular that is being used to run these rounds. So what kind of product differences can people expect if they're used to the old platform? Nate, maybe this one's for you.
Yeah, definitely. So we're really excited about the way that we're building out the new protocol, and then also the platform and dApps on top of that. I think one of the really interesting things for us when we were working with our old platform was just how much customization people wanted. Like as communities would come in, they'd be really excited about the core concept of quadratic funding, but then they would want to have like their own sort of take or own sort of tweaks that really fit what they were trying to do, whether that was eligibility criteria or wanting to give weight to different types of voters. There's just a lot of different things that go into how you as a community decide how you want to allocate your resources. And the old platform really couldn't handle that. So I think the thing that I'm most excited about when it comes to what we're building today is just the flexibility. Like we've really been identifying like what are the different decision points that a community would want to have in terms of distributing their resources. And now like we're giving them the ability to decide at every point of that, like what makes the most sense for them. I think in terms of the overall like app that we've built on top of it, I think what people will probably see is just it's much simpler. Like in the old world, there wasn't much of a back end to speak of. It required a lot of like deep knowledge of our systems for like an operator like Connor or Janine to come in and run around. We've really been investing in that UI so that we really can give it to anyone who wants to run around, and they can log in, they can configure, make all the choices that they want to make around the round themselves, and then deploy it and operate it without needing a big technical team or without really needing to understand our stack at a high level. I think the other thing that we've been doing on the more like donor facing and grantee facing side is trying to streamline the overall experience. So I think the one big shift was that on the old platform, you could come in for a specific round and donate on a variety of chains. You could donate on mainnet, you could use ZK Sync, you could donate on Polygon. We changed with the protocol so that each round will run on one chain. It'll either run on mainnet, it'll run on L2. But I think what you sort of lose in flexibility there, I think you just gain in ease of use. From a grantee perspective, you don't have to worry about porting over from different chains. From a donor perspective, you have like one clean kind of browsing experience. So I think we've definitely stripped it down for this first alpha protocol round, but I think it's also given us a really strong platform so that as we start to get into these next rounds, you'll start to see a lot more experimentation on top of it in terms of curation and sorting and things like that. So I'm really excited for what's coming.
Got it. So where it started was this platform that was centralized and monolithic and was hard to tune, and where it's going is decentralized, modular, allows communities to, because of the simplicity of the modular code base, tune it towards their own needs. And now anyone can kind of take quadratic funding on Gitcoin Grants that was working in Ethereum and apply it to their own DAO, EVM based community. Is that directionally correct?
Yeah, it's exactly right. I think we as the DAO just like really didn't want to be a bottleneck on quadratic funding rounds. I think there's just so many people who are excited about doing that. So this first expression of our protocol is allowing anyone to come in and run a quadratic funding round with civil defense, with kind of like the things that we've come to be known for at Gitcoin. And then I think the step beyond this for us is starting to just like add more and more tools into that toolkit for communities. So adding in additional sort of allocation flavors, adding in different tools, things like that. So we're excited to see where it goes.
Yeah. You said the word allocation there, and it just triggered a thought in my mind that on the governance forum there was some debates about what to call these protocols. And is there a final name for them yet?
I think there is. I hope I'm not going to get skewered for this, but we're going to be calling it the Allo protocol, which I'm really excited about. It's based in allocation, just really speaks to the things that we're trying to do with this protocol. And then we've been building out a series of apps on top of that we're calling the grant stack. And that's what anyone can come in to use to run quadratic funding rounds or do whatever they want. But the Allo protocol is really the engine under the hood that we're also hoping becomes a really strong foundation for builders who are interested in community-based fund allocation.
So you said that anyone can come in and run around. I see in my notes here that y'all have run 2 test rounds on the protocol to date with UNICEF and Phantom. Janine and Connor, you want to talk about those results?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was like we did those in December. So we had a 2-week round for UNICEF, and then Phantom had a much longer round. Phantom actually ran their own round themselves, so it was like a very self-service way of doing it, whereas UNICEF, we worked with them and did a lot of the operations and engaging the grantees and engaging the donors. Both, I would say, were successes. The UNICEF round, we had them put up 50 ETH in the matching pool, and really what they wanted out of it was like, how can we start using crypto to help projects that we're already funding, and how can we help our community get engaged and also like feel empowered to both donate to the grantees and the grantees being able to rely on their communities to donate to them. And it was just a big success across the board. Like Nate and the product team has been doing a great job building the protocols. We sped up the launch of testing these protocols for a partner And sort of running with the UNICEF innovation team was not a small feat to start with, but it all went pretty smoothly. They had 10 grantees in the round. So the interesting thing is the UNICEF round was a curated round. They brought in grantees that they knew and trusted and wanted to support. And I think that worked really well just to like learn about the protocol for them. And we ended up, more than doubling the amount of funds that they put in. So we had a total of 80 ETH in addition that came from 15,500 donors for that round. And that was sort of donations that came in over a 2-week period that went to the 10 different grantees. We had someone from our community build a great Dune dashboard that sort of tracked all the funding and how it was being distributed, which was awesome to follow along with. And the grantees themselves, some of them had never used crypto before. Some of them, are blockchain-based projects. And it was really cool seeing the non-crypto native ones being like, oh, whoa, like I can do this. Like, this is how I create a wallet. This is how I engage my community. Some of them ran their own Twitter spaces. So it was just like really cool seeing how we're actually using these protocols to empower communities to fund, their own projects, and them feeling empowered to actually do that themselves without Gitcoin necessarily doing all of that work in the background. So that was awesome to see for UNICEF. And then the Phantom round was a great one to launch and kind of see what happened there, because that was more self-service. So Nate might actually be able to speak to a little bit of like how we set that round up and how we sort of just let them do their own thing.
Yeah. So Phantom approached us pretty early on as we were building out the protocol, expressing an interest in being an early test partner. I think Connor had a ton of conversations with them in kind of our centralized grants days. And they were just, that community has been one that's just been really excited about quadratic funding in general. And when it came to start testing things out, they were just kind of the ideal partner. They were really willing to get in the weeds with us, like understand, how we wanted to build it, understand like how to give feedback, and just really be there as we were trying to work things through. And I think they were really excited, just as this feels like the beginning of something for them. They ran initial test rounds. They'd put up about 35,000 USD in their matching pool. I think it was 125,000 FTM tokens. They ended up getting over 80 projects accepted into the round, which was great, given that it was just kind of an early start for them. And then in terms of donations, they had over 16,000 unique donors. They also got about 80,000 in direct donations. So they almost tripled the amount that they had put up in the matching funds, which was just really exciting to see. And they're looking at this as a way to continue iterating and build from here. I think one of the things that's been really exciting for us too has just been, I think, the level of like interest in both quadratic funding and public goods in the Phantom community. I think they've been really interested in just sort of understanding like, how do we think about best practices? How do we think about encouraging like good projects in our area? So just been really exciting to see that come up. And I think they've been looking at it as a big success. They're excited to get ready for the next round.
Yeah, one of the things that's exciting to me about this is this idea of open source code in general is a networked good, in that everyone who downloads my NPM package or my pip package and submits a bug report back to the maintainer and that gets fixed makes it better for everyone else who is using that. And I kind of see this same sort of pattern forming with Grants protocol, this new code base that's totally modular, because what Gitcoin learns from the UNICEF and the Phantom rounds accrues value back to the mechanism design for the Ethereum round, and vice versa. So in a world in which there's n numbers of people using the allocation protocol, allo protocol, to fund their public goods, then it just gets better for everyone else that's using it, and everything sort of compounds from there. I'm wondering if you can kind of like draw me a trend line from UNICEF and Phantom to this Ethereum Alpha round. What comes after the Alpha round from there? What's coming in 2023 from Gitcoin?
So yeah, I can hop in here. So more from a like the rounds we're running perspective, not necessarily the product. Our plan is currently to kick off kind of a larger protocol launch and Gitcoin program launch in April. So basically, we've been doing these kind of quarterly round cadences for 4 years now, and we plan to sort of keep that up. So the point of this alpha round is to do a larger test of the protocol in its current state with hundreds of grantees, and when we kind of open the floodgates to the full launch, we're expecting probably closer to like 1,000 grantees or more in these rounds or these groups of rounds. So our sort of roadmap to get there. I think in February, we'll be doing a lot of retrospectives on how this round went, what kind of bugs we found, UX issues, if it gets Sybil attacked or attacked in any way, we'll take some learnings from that. And then we'll kind of turn around, keep building through February and March. And in March, what we want to do is run a few more sort of smaller scale test rounds, but ideally with a lot of our kind of external partners. So we want to help enable other projects to run their own grant programs, but more so to get used to the new protocol, the tech, how they can kind of set things up themselves, and then lead this into something in April where we do more than just 3 rounds, maybe 5, maybe 10 that Gitcoin is kind of operating and hosting, potentially featuring some other rounds from partners, projects in the Ethereum or broader EVM compliant Web3 space, and kind of go from there. So with our own program, currently the plan is to keep up this quarterly cadence. So do these kind of large festival like rounds every 3 months. But what I think users can expect is that there will sort of be a lot of different things going on different cadences at different times, different lengths. So rather than just having 1-2 week period a quarter where there's a bunch of rounds happening at once, you might find that this DAO or this chain decides they want to do something every 2 months or 6 months, and they might run longer programs or shorter programs. And so I think we'll sort of be testing how that works when there's overlapping and varying programs going on. But yeah, the Gitcoin program full protocol launch is planned for April. And we're hoping to stick to that timeline and kind of continue from there on the 3-month cadence. From a product perspective, though, Nate, I guess you could probably share more on what users could expect to be different in a few months' time compared to what they might see right now when they use the protocol.
Yeah. So I think one way to kind of think about this is right now we've poured a bunch of concrete, but it's still kind of wet. I think a lot of what we've been trying to figure out is what the ultimate foundation of the protocol should be. I was mentioning before, like, what are those decision points? Like, what are the things that you want to be able to customize? And I think that's something we're still learning as we build this out. But our hope is that from a protocol perspective, in April, there's a pretty set protocol standard that we can start to enable people to start building upon, like having better developer documentation, really start our developer outreach to enable people to do that. On the kind of grant stack protocol, I think what people can expect is that, on the grant stack point of view, I think what people can expect is that in addition to the program that's running, that they'll have the ability to go and self-serve, start creating their own rounds. One of the things that we're going to be doing once this round ends is kind of taking a breath, as Connor said, to shore up our documentation and just make sure it's really easy for people to come in and do what they want to do, so that when everything goes live, anyone who wants to come in and run a quadratic funding round will be able to do that using GrantStack on their own, set it up, set their decisions, and kind of go from there. As we kind of widen the aperture and look a little bit further out into the year, my hope is that you just start to see more functionality coming on top of that. So I think on the quadratic funding side, we've built, I think, like a very kind of clean V1 of QF that enables you to come in and do kind of like the basic version of QF. But we want to start adding in the ability to do, I think, more interesting versions of that or variations of that, where you can start providing different types of weights to your community when you can kind of experiment with matching caps, experiment with different types of civil defense. So I think there's some like really interesting things coming on the QF side specifically. I think some of the other things that we're really excited to build on top of the protocol are this idea of project reputation. So I think one thing that we hear from communities when they're trying to run grants programs is, how do I know which projects to trust? And we're trying to create the ability for projects to really earn those almost as stamps, like for people to be able to learn, like, yes, I've been a part of different Gitcoin rounds, or yes, I've shipped XYZ features. Just helping people really understand like who these projects are so that they can start to more easily engage in funding programs. And then I think the other thing that we'll be adding on top of this is just more additional types of grants programs and funding programs. So being able to do things like direct rounds, quadratic fund voting is something that we're really excited about building. So the TLDR is that come April, the product will enable you to come in and run a self-serve quadratic funding round with all the documentation you need. And as we push out towards the year, you'll see additional functionality on quadratic funding on top of quadratic voting, direct grants programs, as well as some project reputation. So TBD on what exact order that comes in, but that's what we're eyeing through the rest of the year.
And I think something that I'll add in there is like one thing we did for, these alpha rounds with Gitcoin was just do a few small simulated rounds ourselves, just to like learn about how the whole thing worked. So we came in with like 10 grantees, put up just like a small amount, like it was like $2,000 that we put up, got a few donors to come and contribute. And just by kind of creating a like container, it was a safe container that we got to learn in, that we got to test it in. That's what we'd love to see partners do too, to start. Like if they're concerned about going in and like running a whole big self-service round and they're like, I don't know, this is a lot of funding. I don't know how reviews are going to look. I don't know how donations are going to look. Like the beauty of the protocol will be that people can go on, do something small just to test it out, and then run as many or as few larger rounds as they want moving forward. And I think what we're trying to build is like a world where anyone can come around at any time, but we'll be running this Gitcoin program on a regular cadence. So starting at quarterly, and that's really focused on like funding public goods that our Gitcoin community cares about. And we're saying, anyone that wants to come and run rounds at the same time as us to get like more discoverability, to get more insight into just like how we run rounds, learning from just like our marketing, being a part of that, like running around at the same time, where you do want to fund public goods as a partner, and you're just trying to learn at the same time. Like we're stoked to have partners running around at the same time. So that's something I think I'm pretty excited about.
Yeah, it feels like y'all have entered this sort of like OODA loop of OODA is this idea when you're in an unknown territory in which you can observe what's happening around you, orient, decide what to do, and then you act. And it's this iterative loop that I remember being in Gitcoin Grants rounds 1 through, I think I was involved through like rounds 12, in which we would kind of just plan out a round, talk to Vitalik, see what he wants in the mechanism, roll out the round, and get the data back, and then decide what to do, what we learned from the round. And it was that cycle of sort of being in this dance with the community through which we tried things like negative voting and collections and checking. I think Gitcoin was one of the first DApps to integrate with the layer 2 because there was just so much usage on Gitcoin, and with the median transaction cost or median transaction being like $1, having really low cost transactions was really important. So just entering into that dance with the community is what I'm really excited to see Gitcoin do with the new modular protocol. And it's a whole new team, a whole new governance system, a whole new code base, and so y'all are going to be climbing towards better allocation resources with the community. It seems like, I guess like what's the global maxima that you're iterating towards as you kick off these rounds in 2023?
I think personally, the thing that I am most excited about is this really fluid sort of resource allocation for communities. I realize that's a lot of buzzwords, but I think, the communities that I get really excited about are the ones that tend to be sort of like local, like neighborhood communities. Like it's a neighborhood sort of coming together to decide how do we want to like pool some resources towards improving what's here, what we're working towards, or more sort of like regional oriented thing. This idea of sort of like localism or like digital localism, I think is super exciting and what I see for. And I think what excites me about the protocol is that if we do all this right, there's an opportunity for communities to really easily say, like, okay, these people get to decide what we're going to decide on. Here's how much money we have, and that's a vote system, and get to a point where like we can decide in groups like really quickly how we want to put our money against something. But I think what that also does is kind of give us a spot that we can start to plug in like ongoing funds. Like I think this is why it's been such an interesting application for Web3 protocols, where if you're gathering some sort of fees, you can just kind of auto direct them to a grants program or something on our protocol and just continuously be pushing funds towards what your community needs. I'm excited to see how this starts to like port over to day-to-day lives too. Like, is there some sort of always on funding that we can be directing to regional communities, local communities, things like that?
Let me ask you this, Nate. Is there one perfect coordination mechanism that is going to be the right fit for all communities to allocate resources to their commons?
I love this question. My personal feeling is no. I think that there is going to be a plethora of sort of tools, and it's going to be like one of our jobs, I think, as a DAO is going to be understanding like which tools are right for which situations and how can we help communities figure out what makes the most sense. Like I think quadratic funding is super interesting when you have a large engaged community that's willing to donate on top of that and sort of like supercharge what you're doing. I think things like quadratic voting are super interesting when it's maybe a smaller community or you have like a more kind of credentialed community or something like that. So I think there's a lot of room for design and learning, but no, I don't think there's one specific thing.
So the Allo protocol, the allocation protocol, really, it seems like that's going to get forked a lot. And there's going to be like Allo protocol sub QV, Allo protocol pairwise quadratic funding, Allo protocol Macy quadratic funding. And then if y'all want to get really weird, there could be Allo protocols for assurance contracts or hypercerts or sortition, demurrage, ranked choice voting. Like, Griff, the founder of Giveth, and I just did a podcast on coordination mechanisms, and we found like 25 different coordination mechanisms. And so I'm curious to see how wide and deep the allocation protocols get. Is it the allocation protocol that'll be forked, and how does that sort of like vision of trying out all those different mechanisms resonate with you as the product lead?
Yeah, it sounds like exactly what we want to have. I think when I think about the protocol, like the things that are going to be really powerful elements of it, I think one is like the concept of like a project and its reputation. Like if you're trying to allocate funds, you're trying to allocate funds to somewhere. So knowing that like the place that you are allocating to or the people that you are allocating to are trustworthy or like capable of doing the thing that you want to do, I think is super important. So that to me is like something that we need to make sure is like shining through. But I think the other part of this equation is just what are the different ways that your community or verified community can make a decision. So I think the more that we have those decision-making mechanisms, whether it's quadratic funding or one of the other 25 from your list, I think that's exactly what we want to see happen.
Great. So if I just want to pinch and zoom on this. So Gitcoin is no longer quadratic funding maximalists because there's other allocation protocols that could be built into Grant Stack. Did I hear that correctly, or is there a shade of gray there?
I would not claim to speak for Gitcoin. I'm but one node in the network, as someone I know likes to say. I think like I love quadratic funding as a mechanism. I think it's a super important mechanism. I'm curious what Janine and Connor think. I think it's going to be a key part of like our program going forward. I think from a protocol perspective, I think there's going to be a ton of different opportunities. It just seems like for what Gitcoin's doing right now, quadratic funding is like the best way for us to express our opinions as a community.
Okay.
I kind of think adding on there, like agreed, quadratic funding right now is working really well for the program. So like getting that right on the protocol is step one. Like let's get that sort of locked down. But then kind of to the point of like why we're building a modular protocol, it's like the hope is that it builds and flex and changes and different people come in and build on top of it and bring like totally new allocation design to the table. I think QF is like a step in the right direction. Like if you think about the fiat world and communities, like how communities work, where it's like any financial allocation is there, it's a membership model, right? It's like you're paying up front, you're paying a specific amount every month. Think about like a country club, think about Soho House, think about any random community. It's like you're paying a membership and like you don't really get to choose what's in there. You're just like, okay, well, I guess I'll be a part of this, and like I don't know where my money's going. But like imagine you can kind of fracture that out. Like QF is a great way to start, but like that's just the beginning of a really long road to get much more dynamic in terms of how we're allocating and meeting and reaching communities' needs.
Yeah, I'd plus one to that. I mean, I personally think that like quadratic funding is sort of where Gitcoin has found its niche, or like originally found its niche. And that's, it's really what we're known for and what a lot of the Web3 community, kind of sees Gitcoin as and what they use our platform for. That said, that doesn't mean it'll be like that, forever. There's other QF platforms coming up and already out. There's other mechanisms that Gitcoin plans to experiment with. But personally, I'm very bullish on QF, and it doesn't have to be QF in its current form or necessarily like just kind of plain vanilla quadratic funding. I think even on the old grants platform that we ran that was fairly centralized, it changed a lot over the years. It initially was just kind of like one big matching pool or one small matching pool that all grants were sharing. We started playing around with categories where grants had to be in one category, they couldn't be in multiple, and they had a certain amount of matching allocated to each category. We started doing, we actually merged it back in to get together to one large round again. We added things like pairwise QF, where it actually looks at the donations and the patterns among donors, and we'll dampen groups of donors that look like they're colluding. We added things like matching caps. So there's a maximum amount that one grant could take that then redistributes it to other grants. So, we kind of experimented and played around with the mechanism a lot to see how that changed the results. And we're going to continue doing that. But now we're at a point where we can enable anyone to kind of do that and, experiment in their own way and take what, they learn from each iterative round and to build on that or to change that. And so to kind of go back to the initial question of like, what are we excited about, or what's the addressable market here? In the short term, I'm super bullish on QF and coordination mechanisms that kind of can happen on the Gitcoin protocol as being a part of the DAO tooling stack. So, maybe a DAO has, they have a governance token, they like vote to make decisions. They also have a regular grants program. This will just be like a piece of that puzzle that, lets them say, okay, we're going to allocate, X% of our funding to this matching pool and use that to incentivize community donations, community votes, and more, active contributing and decision making. And so I think it kind of fits in, in a lot of DAOs or layer twos or, kind of like decentralized protocols where it's a decision making tool in the shorter term. And I think that's primarily because, Web3 also has these kind of UX, barriers to get over and wider adoption. We need to make all of this simpler to use. But in the next, 1 to 2 to 3 years, I think this could really kind of fit in as a piece of the DAO tooling stack. But then longer term, like I would love to see this adopted by, communities, governments, maybe smaller scale, towns or states, and, even larger scale nation states or whatever replaces them eventually, where this is just a coordination tool, a fundraising tool, and a capital allocation tool that all types of communities, local, digital, and global, could use.
Right. It feels like, to sum it up, like Gitcoin 1.0 was fishing for you, in Grant Stack teaches you to fish,
Totally.
so to speak. The other analogy that I see out in market is I actually read this on the Gitcoin forum, someone posted about it, but like the OP stack is a way of composing an L2 with modular components so that anyone can take the Optimism codebase and build an L2. Whereas like Optimism, the old version was just like they ran an L2 for you. And the parallel I see with GrantStack is that GrantStack is a modular set of code bases that allows you to run a plain vanilla grants program or a quadratic funding grants program. You can compose any sort of grants program using the grant stack, similar to how with the OP stack you can compose a L2. Yeah, is it any reactions to that, or is that directionally correct?
Yeah, that feels right. I think there have been a number of I think you might have talked about this analogy early on too, but like I've always really enjoyed the idea of like the WordPress.com and WordPress.org kind of analogy too, where it's like we're like there is just a basic system for running running blogs. In that case, that's the Allo protocol, and then having like GrantStack on top of it for people who want a little bit more handholding. But yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Like we want people to be able to like get into the code base of the protocol, experiment with it, build on top of it. And in the meantime, we're also going to be providing a really simple UI for people who want to just be able to run this without having to get into it.
So there's the express lane where you hit a button, you get in touch with Gitcoin's partnerships team, and they'll help you run around in the fast lane, or you can fork it and go run it yourself. And that's the analogy with WordPress, where you can go to WordPress and you can just spin up a blog and pay $5 a month, or you can fork the code base and run it. You sort of see that spectrum from full service to doing it yourself.
Exactly.
And I think a big piece of that's like a huge unlock from what we did is like the platform previously to now what we have with the protocol is like before was like how many rounds could we run, and it was all based on like the operational team and what capacity we had, as well as like people having to run on our quarterly cadence. And now sort of shifting into this space where it's like run a grants program in your own capacity, in your own way. It doesn't necessarily have to be the same way that we've been trying to get people to run rounds. Like you could just do it just to hire people, right? Like if you want to have a subtraction mindset of hiring and not bring people internally, but you just want to find projects that are building in your ecosystem, like run a continuous grants round for the year and see where that goes. So it's just like this like huge unlock from a operational capacity standpoint, where it's not reliant on our team anymore in terms of how many rounds run and when.
Yeah, and I guess I would just add, and I think Kevin, you actually maybe can speak to this a lot as well, but like, we didn't build, again, this is because you built a lot of the initial, Sea Grants platform through, 2019 over the years.
Sea Grants stands for centralized grants.
Yeah. So that's the old grants platform that, many of you, if you've donated to a Gitcoin Grants round before, that's the platform you were using. And yeah, so, Kevin, you were obviously an instrumental piece in launching that and maintaining it for a long time. But like the reason why it was built in the way it wasn't that because we wanted it to be centralized, we wanted to control it, we wanted to like gate who could use the platform, but more so out of necessity. Because I think, if you haven't solved for, preventing Sybil attacks or fraud or, identity systems, then like the whole mechanism of quadratic funding just totally breaks. And, I still think maybe we're not there yet where like we have a robust, trusted, like decentralized identity system. But, we sort of had to like admin these rounds as Gitcoin and kind of make sure, grants are being approved in a fair way. Donors weren't gaming the system. We weren't getting, Sybil attacked in like a widespread way. And if we kind of launched it as a decentralized platform, I think we were missing a lot of those identity tools that really allow you to like prevent those attacks. So, for a long time, like we were kind of in control of these rounds because we had to have all these things on the back end where, we're sort of ensuring the fairness and preventing malicious actors from cheating the system. But I think the whole Web3 space has evolved a lot in the last 4 years. And, specifically like the decentralized identity piece is what's going to be key to kind of enabling this decentralized, this open permissionless QF or other protocol. And so that, I think we're getting there. It's still sort of an experiment. We're still trying to like figure out the best solutions for decentralized identity. But it's not like we always wanted grants to be centralized. I think this was always sort of the goal to decentralize it. But that identity piece is sort of like the key thing that either makes or breaks a decentralized protocol.
Yeah, I think that that's certainly a theme on the podcast this year. Decentralized identity allows us to track our counterparties and, in a privacy aware way. So, at least track who they are and build repeat interactions and positive sum games on top of that. And now Gitcoin Passport is here and it's actually happening. We only have 5 minutes left. So I'm wondering if there's anything I didn't ask that anyone wants to say, just keeping mindful that among the four of us that we only have 5 minutes left. So Janine, maybe I'll go to you next.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing is like this round ahead, it's about to start, or it has already started when you're listening to this. Like, please go donate, like test it out, give us feedback. Like, we're still in the alpha stages of the protocol and we really want to build with the community. So please help us like test it out, give us feedback. We'll link to the donation links in the show notes. So let's just make sure to make that happen. And like go in these next 2 weeks, donate to different grants. We've got a bunch of awesome grants in there. We're stoked about who's actually going to be in these 3 rounds. And like this whole thing happens and works well if we've got a community that's donating and participating. So like we couldn't do it without any of you guys helping with funding the projects that are most important in this ecosystem.
Yeah, and maybe just to like very quickly step back, because I'm sure we'll have some people on this thinking like, how can I get involved? Where do I apply, et cetera? And we haven't really talked about that. But these alpha rounds, we put out a governance post, and maybe we can link that, or it's just discussion and feedback request on the alpha rounds. But these are not just open for brand new applications of grants, unfortunately. What we decided sort of as a DAO and as a community is that, for these early stage rounds, as we're testing out the products and, kind of Sybil and fraud prevention, we need to like sort of start small and grow. So the 3 rounds, Web3 open source, Ethereum infrastructure, and climate solutions are only open to a subset of grantees from the old platform, the centralized grants platform. And we set that threshold on the amount they've raised in prior rounds or the amount of unique donors. And so we sent out specific invites to those existing grants to help us, test out the new protocol. And there were also new eligibility requirements. So just because grants were invited doesn't mean they were automatically approved. But so these are all kind of a subset of existing projects. They all should be approved and live on the platform now, so you can check them out. And I'm not sure if we mentioned this, but these rounds each have a $333,000 matching pool or DAI, so $1 million in total. So unfortunately, it is too late to join the round. However, what we want people to do is to donate, test out the protocol, try to break it, try to test out weird edge cases, and help us report bugs and improve the user experience. And then come, March, April, we'll be doing many more rounds that are kind of open to the broader community, to brand new projects that, we'll want everyone to join.
Thanks, Connor. Nate, any last words?
Just underlining what's already been said. Like, go donate at the rounds. We'll have the link in the show notes. And yeah, give us feedback. I'll add a feedback form as well. But really excited to hear what y'all think, and also excited just to get the tools in everybody's hands. So thank you.
Great. Well, action item for the listener, go to gitcoin.co, click on the link up top to go to the alpha round and donate, kick the tires on the new quadratic funding protocol. And thanks to Janine, Connor, and Nate for joining me on this GreenPilled episode.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, appreciate it. That was fun.
Peace and love.